The things you believe are helping your baby thrive, the routines, the reactions, the small daily habits, are quietly shaping neural pathways that will influence who your child becomes for the rest of their life. Welcome to Silent Baby Mind. Subscribe right now because what you're about to learn today will permanently change the way you look at your child. Let's start with the mistake that happens dozens of times every single day, one so normalized you've never once questioned it. 1. You rush to stop the cry. The second your baby makes a sound, you move. You pick them up, you shush, you rock, you offer the breast or the bottle, and that instinct feels right. It feels like love in action. It feels like exactly what a good parent does. But here's what the neuroscience is telling us, and it is not what most parenting culture will say out loud. When a baby cries, something important is happening inside their brain. The limbic system, the emotional core, is activating. And in those first few seconds before you respond, your baby is doing something they desperately need to do. They are beginning to learn that discomfort is survivable. This is not about leaving your baby to cry alone. This is about the difference between a 2-second pause and an immediate override of every uncomfortable feeling your baby will ever have. Researchers at the University of Notre Dame, studying early emotional development, found that babies whose caregivers allowed brief natural windows before responding, just seconds, showed greater self-regulatory capacity at age 3 compared to babies whose every discomfort was immediately eliminated. The babies who experienced tiny, manageable doses of frustration early on developed stronger neural circuits for emotional regulation. What you're building when you pause, even for 3 seconds, is a brain that knows it can handle difficulty. What you may be building when you eliminate every cry the instant it starts is a nervous system that never learns to self-soothe. A child who at age 4, at age 8, at age 15, reaches for external comfort because internal comfort was never given the chance to develop. This is not about being cold. It is about trusting your baby enough to let them exist inside a difficult feeling for just a moment before you rescue them from it. 2. You narrate everything your baby does. You think you're teaching language. You may be overwhelming the very system language is built on. Every parent has been told, talk to your baby constantly, name things, narrate, describe. The more words, the better the outcomes, and there is truth in that. Language exposure matters enormously. But there is a version of this that crosses a line most parents don't know exists. When the auditory environment is unrelenting, constant TV noise, constant parental narration, music playing at all times, the infant brain does not receive more input. It begins to filter. It begins to tune out. Because the developing auditory cortex, unlike the adult brain, does not have the same selective attention capacity. It cannot choose what to process and what to ignore. It gets everything all at once. A landmark study from the University of Washington showed that babies in high-noise environments actually showed delayed phoneme discrimination, the ability to detect the specific sounds that form the building blocks of language, compared to babies in quieter environments with focused, responsive communication. More noise did not build better language. It created a kind of neural static. What a baby's developing brain needs is not constant sound. It needs contrast. It needs moments of silence followed by your voice, directed at them, making eye contact. It needs the rhythm of communication, not the flood of it. Let there be quiet in your home, real, deliberate quiet. Because inside that quiet, your baby's brain is not idling. It is integrating. It is processing everything it already received. Silence is not absence. For an infant brain, silence is work. 3. You treat face-to-face interaction as optional. You hand them to the bouncy chair, you prop the tablet in front of them while you make dinner, you hold them while scrolling through your phone, eyes down, and you tell yourself it's fine. They're fed, they're safe, they're right here. But here's what's happening in those moments that you cannot see. The human face is the single most neurologically significant stimulus in a baby's environment, not because it is warm and familiar, but because of what happens in a baby's brain when it sees a face that is responsive, a face that changes based on what the baby does. When your baby makes a sound and you make a face back, when they smile and you smile wider, when they look away and you wait, and when they look back, you're still there. This pattern, serve and return, as developmental scientists call it, is not just bonding. It is literally building the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for empathy, decision-making, impulse control, and complex thought. Research from Harvard Center on the Developing Child has documented that serve and return interactions in infancy are among the most powerful predictors of cognitive and social outcomes across childhood. Not flashcards, not educational videos, not structured stimulation, the back and forth of a responsive human face. When that face is replaced by a screen, which does not respond to the baby, which continues regardless of what the baby does, the serve and return circuit gets input on only one side. The baby serves. Nothing returns. And over time, the brain begins to expect less. It stops initiating as much. It learns unconsciously that its signals don't land. Put the phone down and look at your baby like they are the most interesting thing in the room. Because to their developing brain, you are not just interesting. You are the entire architecture of their future social world. 4. You celebrate every milestone. You may be missing the ones that matter most. First steps, first word, first time sleeping through the night. These are the moments parenting culture frames as victories, as evidence that your child is developing on track, that you are doing it right. But developmental neuroscience has quietly identified a different set of milestones, ones that almost no one talks about at baby showers, that are far more predictive of long-term well-being and cognitive capacity. Does your baby tolerate gentle frustration without immediate escalation? That is a marker of early emotional regulation, one of the strongest predictors of school readiness ever identified. Does your baby make eye contact during feeding, and then look away, and then return? That regulation of social attention is an early sign of healthy attachment and autonomic nervous system development. Does your baby explore new objects with their mouth and hands, and then pause, seemingly waiting before continuing? That pause is the beginning of something extraordinary. The impulse to check in with a trusted adult before proceeding into the unknown. Researchers call it social referencing, and it is one of the earliest signs of secure attachment. None of these appear in the parenting apps. None of them trend on social media. But every one of them tells you something about the invisible architecture being built inside your child's brain right now, every day, in the quiet moments between the milestones everyone is watching for. 5. You assume your stress is invisible to your baby. You had a hard day. You are tense. You are anxious. But you smile at your baby. You use the soft voice. You go through the motions of calm. And you believe, because you are performing calm, that your baby is receiving calm. They are not. Babies do not read faces the way adults do. They read nervous systems. Through a process called physiological co-regulation, a baby's autonomic nervous system is in constant direct communication with the nervous system of their primary caregiver. Your heart rate variability, your cortisol levels, the subtle muscular tension in your arms when you hold them, the micro-expressions that appear on your face for 200 milliseconds before your social smile takes over. Your baby reads all of it. A study published in the journal Psychological Science found that babies as young as 6 months showed elevated cortisol responses when held by a parent who had been exposed to a social stressor, even when the parent was actively trying to appear calm and engaged. The baby's bodies knew what the parents' faces were hiding. This is not a reason to feel guilty for being human. It is a reason to take your own emotional regulation seriously, not just for yourself, but because your nervous system is the first environment your baby lives in. When you are regulated, your baby has access to regulation. When you are chronically dysregulated, your baby's developing stress response system is being calibrated to a world that feels unsafe. The most profound thing you can do for your baby's developing brain some days is not a sensory activity or a new toy. It is sitting quietly and breathing, slowly and deeply, while you hold them. Not for their sake in the way we usually think of it, but because your calm body is the most sophisticated neurological intervention available. 6. You protect your baby from boredom. You may be protecting them from one of the most important developmental experiences that exists. An unstimulated baby lying on a mat staring at the ceiling looks, to the modern parenting eye, like a problem to be solved, like neglect dressed in good intentions. So you rotate the toys, you add the activity gym, you reposition them, you engage. But here's what a baby on a mat staring at nothing in particular is actually doing. They are practicing the single most foundational cognitive skill a human brain can develop: attending to the internal world. The default mode network, the neural system that activates during rest, daydreaming, and unstructured thought, begins developing in infancy. And it requires periods of unstimulated quiet to consolidate. This network is the biological substrate of imagination, of self-awareness, of the ability to simulate future scenarios and understand other people's minds. Research published in the journal Neuroimage found that the strength of default mode network connectivity in early childhood is one of the most robust predictors of creative and social cognitive capacity in adolescence. This network is not built during stimulation, it is built in the spaces between. A baby who is always entertained is a baby whose default mode network is never asked to activate independently. And a child who grows up never sitting with boredom becomes an adult who cannot tolerate silence, who cannot access their inner world, who reaches compulsively for external input the moment the external input stops. Let your baby be bored, safely, warmly, and within your sight. Let them stare at the ceiling. Let them watch their own hands. Let them exist in that quiet space where the most important internal wiring of their life is quietly, invisibly being installed. 7. You think you know how your baby is feeling. You may be reading them almost entirely wrong. Your baby yawns and you think, tired. Your baby goes still and you think, content. Your baby looks away during play and you think, disinterested. Your baby arches their back slightly and you think, gassy. Developmental researchers studying infant communication have documented a detailed system of signals that babies use to communicate their internal states, signals that most caregivers, even attentive and loving ones, consistently misread. Gaze aversion, looking away, is not disinterest. It is self-regulation. When stimulation reaches a threshold the infant nervous system cannot yet sustain, the baby breaks visual contact to give the brain a moment to integrate. A caregiver who interprets this as rejection and increases stimulation to re-engage is doing the opposite of what the baby is asking for. The still face, a sudden shift from animated expression to flat, quiet immobility, is one of the earliest and most overlooked distress signals in infants. It does not look like distress, it looks like calm. But it is the baby's nervous system going into a low arousal protective state in response to social overwhelm or disconnection. Finger splaying, the baby spreading their fingers wide, is a documented stress signal in neonates and young infants, indicating autonomic nervous system activation. It is almost universally interpreted as stretching. A study from Leiden University found that parents who received even 4 hours of training in infant behavioral cue recognition showed measurably different interaction patterns with their babies within 1 week. And their babies showed significantly lower cortisol levels, better sleep consolidation, and more organized behavioral states at the 3-month follow-up. 4 hours. That is all it took to change the neurochemical environment a baby was developing inside. Your baby has been speaking to you since the first hour of their life, in a language built not of words, but of body, breath, gaze, and stillness. The question was never whether they were communicating. The question is whether you have been taught to listen. And now, looking at everything on this list together, one thing becomes completely clear. Every single one of these mistakes comes from love that is missing one thing: information. You rush to stop the cry because you love your baby and want them to feel safe. You narrate constantly because you want to give them every advantage. You scroll for a moment because you are exhausted and human. You protect them from boredom because you want to give them everything. None of this is failure. All of it is fixable. The baby in front of you right now, the one who has been trying to tell you how they feel in a language you were never taught, that baby's brain is still plastic, still forming, still responding to everything you bring into the room with you. Start today. When your baby cries, breathe for 3 seconds before you move. Create 10 minutes of genuine quiet in your home each day. Put your phone down and let your face be the screen your baby is looking at. Let them be bored. Let them look away. And learn, even just a little, the language they have been speaking all along. Because the child you are hoping they will become is not a future version of who they are. It is the brain being built right now, in this moment, by everything you understand and everything you choose to do with it. If this video changed the way you see your baby, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And drop a comment below telling us which one of these you had no idea about, because I promise you, you are not alone. If you want to keep going deeper, subscribe to Silent Baby Mind. Give this video a like so more parents can find it, and we'll see you in the next video.